Alright, good evening everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Danger Zone Reviews. I'm Devin Dunnigan, and today I am back and I'm going to be discussing the 2004 compilation Van Halen, The Best of Both Worlds. So, this is the band's second compilation overall, and pretty much this was put out in order to coincide with the recent reunion at the time with Sammy Hagar. And yeah, I mean, pretty interesting compilation, I will say, to start things off. Pretty much this record was originally supposed to be a full-length studio album, but because Eddie Van Halen was pretty much a mess at the time, they just decided to do 3 new songs and just leave it be. But I mean, at this point in time, Sammy Hagar was still active. I mean, he had been touring. He did the Sam and Dave tour, which was pretty much a train wreck. And then he had been putting out albums, touring with the Wobberitas. He had his Tequila going. I mean, he was pretty much a very active musician. But Van Halen had not been active since, at this point in the public view, 1999. I mean, there were rumblings of a reunion between Diamond Dave and the band from 2000 to 2001, which was confirmed. But as far as a public view, they had started working on a follow-up to Van Halen 3 and just never went anywhere except for some demos. And I mean, this was 2004. The last album they had put out was 1998's Van Halen 3. So I mean, this was the longest gap between any Van Halen studio, and I mean the gap after this until A Different Kind of Truth was even longer. But this compilation, I do enjoy it. Before reviewing this particular compilation, I had some pretty bad things to say about it, but listening back to it, I actually found it pretty enjoyable. And I'll talk about like the sequencing and all of that. But yeah, I mean, they put this version of the band back together, and Sammy Hagar said he didn't really even need to do the reunion, but basically did so to try to rebuild his relationship with the Van Halens and kind of rectify the broken relationship they had went out on in 1996. But I mean, this is one of those cases where they tried something and it just, quite frankly, didn't work. And I mean, I just don't think it was really meant for this lineup to move past this era. I mean, they reunited. Sammy had his stuff going on. Eddie and Alex were kind of just there. Michael Anthony had been touring with Sammy. So, I mean, it was kind of just, let's try this out and see. And even Sammy says in his book that if things would have worked out, he would have still been in the band after that. But, I mean, I'll get into the tour and that whole thing. But pretty much this compilation is all of the singles released, spread throughout 2 discs. The idea that I had originally heard for this compilation was it was going to be 1 disc Dave and then the 2nd disc Sammy, or vice versa. But I've heard negotiations and stuff was the reason that didn't happen. And between the 2 singers, Sammy gets more songs. I think he gets like 22 or something like that. It's, I believe, 14 studio songs, then the 3 tracks from the live album, and then the 3 new songs. So 20 something, I know. But I mean, pretty well represented, I will say. Maybe it's not split evenly down the middle, but it's still a good balance of material. I mean, cutting the live songs and the 3 new songs out, I mean, it evens itself out pretty good. But I mean, the three new tracks. I mean, I'll just start with that, I guess. The three new songs, according to Sammy Hagar, he says all three of them were basically copied and pasted from other songs. He says that pretty much they went through a bunch of tapes trying to find good ideas, and pretty much what we get on the album is kind of a result of that. And I will say some of the songs kind of feel that way, and I'll talk about my thoughts on each individual new song. But I mean, overall, I like all three songs, but two are not great, and then one I actually really dig. And I mean, I'll talk about them individually, but they all sound kind of like they're rushed and kind of not all the way thought out, and you're kind of getting all of these different ideas, both lyrically and musically, all in a single song. And I mean, it does kind of get jarring, but I'm not saying they're bad songs or anything like that. But I mean, Sammy basically says that they went through all kinds of tapes, from the follow-up to Van Halen 3 to the Diamond Dave reunion. I mean, he said they went through all kinds of stuff, but just they ended up taking the best of what they could find and doing something with it. And I mean, It's About Time, which is the first new song on here. It's a good track. It's not amazing, but it's, I guess, passable for kind of this kind of balanced era sounding song. It kind of has that kind of alternative kind of post-grunge feel to it. And I like this song. It's not amazing or anything like that, but it's decent. And then Up for Breakfast, by far my favorite of the three songs. It's a fun, sleazy rocker. Basically takes the synth intro to Why Can't This Be Love and basically rocks it out. And I like the song quite a bit. I mean, it's innuendo-filled, sleazy rock and roll. And then Learning to See, to me, it would have fit better on a Sammy solo album. It kind of has this, like I said, with It's About Time, kind of has this post-grunge feel to it. It's not horrible, but it's not great at all either. And, I mean, other than that, there's nothing else new on this album. And, I mean, then you go into basically a Dave song, a Sammy song, a Dave song, a Sammy song. And at first, before going back and revisiting the compilation, I had a problem with that, but listening to it, I kind of found enjoyment in it. I mean, I thought it actually sort of worked, but I've also resequenced it to make it more kind of go in a chronological order, and I think that actually would have been the better choice, was to have made it one disc Dave, one disc Sammy. But I mean, you also have Nothing from Van Halen 3, and No Humans Being, which I found that, I wouldn't say there is no like glaring omission on this record, but Van Halen Humans Being, I think, would have been the better inclusion, maybe instead of, say, one of the live songs. I think you could have threw that on here and took one of the live songs off. And the three live songs are kind of, I mean, that album is okay, the live Right Here, Right Now. I'm not going to really talk about that record because that's a future review. But, I mean, having those songs on here, I mean, you've got Ain't Talking About Love, Panama, and Jump, which are all already on the record as Diamond Dave era songs, and I understand they were trying to push the Van Hagar era at the time. I mean, it kind of confirms my theory on, yeah, they were trying at that point to forget about the Diamond Dave era, but I mean, a few years later, they would of course reunite with him and do a full-on reunion and have the album and then the live album and all. But I mean, those three songs, kind of, they didn't really make that much sense. I kind of like I said, I understand they were pushing the Sammy era and stuff like that, but I just kind of found it to be, okay, put something else on here. I mean, you could have, like I said, put Humans Being, I mean, you could have even taken all three of them off, put Humans Being, Without You, and Fire in the Hole, so then you would have represented Van Halen 3 and kind of threw Gary Sharon a bone here. But, I mean, I understand why they did it, because, I mean, it is called the best of both worlds. So, I mean, in most people's eyes, Sammy and Dave are the only two singers of the band, and to a lot of people, it's only Dave. But, I mean, I kind of understand it not having anything for Van Halen 3, but it would have been nice to at least get, like, Without You on here. It's like a song on disc 2 or something like that. But, like I said, I understand why they didn't. But the 3 live songs, getting back to that, they could have picked some more live songs. I mean, maybe even throw, like, Eagles Fly, which was on the Jump Live single, and Mine All Mine from OU812 tour that was on the Jump Live single. They could have threw those on there, and then maybe put Won't Get Fooled Again, or maybe even took The Dream Is Over that didn't appear on the live record and actually put it on here from the video version, so of Live Right Here, Right Now. So, I mean, they could have done that a little bit better, but overall, the compilation itself, I'd probably give around a 7. I mean, it is a career-encompassing package, and I like that aspect about it. I like that kind of concept with the overall collection, but personally, I would have kind of done like maybe a best of volume 2 or something, like took all the stuff that didn't make the cut on the first compilation and throw it on the second compilation. Like, take all the singles that weren't released on the previous compilation, like Not Enough, and I don't think the Seventh Seal's on here. Maybe, I can't remember. I mean, take those songs and put on here and call it Best of Volume 2, and then add in the 3 new Sammy songs, and then throw on a couple of songs from Van Halen 3, and then throw on maybe the 3 songs from the live album. That would have worked a little bit better. But, I mean, it is what it is. The compilation's out. I mean, there's nothing no one can do about it. You can't change time. But that's just kind of what I probably would have done. But, I mean, they were kind of trying to push the overall Van Hagar era, so you get more Van Hagar songs. But, I mean, regardless, you couldn't put out a Van Hagar compilation, I don't think. I mean, it would have had to have been a mixture of Dave and Sammy stuff. But, I mean, overall, the compilation itself is good enough. I mean, it covers the bases. I mean, you even have, like, Oh Pretty Woman from Diver Down, Dancing in the Streets from Diver Down. So you're getting Diver Down covered on this one. I know it wasn't covered on Best of Volume 1, and from what I take from it, pretty much it was because Eddie hates Diver Down. That's the reason nothing made it on that compilation. But, I mean, it is what it is. Just like the live tracks, I mean, there was nothing from the live album on there, but, I mean, it is what it is. So, yeah, I give that aspect a solid 7 out of 10. I mean, it covers the bases, and that's all I really ask from a compilation. Maybe it's kind of a mess going back and forth here and there, but, I mean, it is what it is. But, like I said, I do find that enjoyable. I'm not bashing it. So, the overall packaging for the album, I actually really do dig. I think the whole Frankenstein sort of Frankenstrat design on the front. I said Frankenstein, but Frankenstrat design on the packaging, I liked it quite a bit. I like the digipack sort of packaging, and I mean, you can fold it out and the CDs are housed in it, and then you have the picture of the band and all that. And then the booklet, it's nothing special. You get a few pictures, and then you get like the discography, and I like that. I thought that was pretty freaking cool. But I mean, other than that, I mean, packaging wise, I probably give it a 8 or 9. I mean, it's fine. You don't really get any rare pictures in here. You get a few pictures. I believe it's 2 or 3, maybe even 4 from the '04 era. And I mean, it is what it is. But I mean, overall, probably an 8 or 9 for me for the packaging and stuff like that. So before we wrap up here, I'm going to talk about the succeeding tour. So the Best of Both Worlds tour. So pretty much a train wreck. And I think that's kind of an understatement. I mean, read Sammy's book if you want to hear more about it. I mean, it's kind of interesting. And I'm not saying... There's a lot of stuff in that book that Sammy gets wrong, like saying the 5150 tour started on March or whatever of 1987 when it didn't. I think it did start on that date, but not 1987. And there was some other stuff he got wrong, and then there was also him basically putting out there like he was big as Van Halen, and I mean, that was not the case. I mean, he was just kind of getting started with VOA before he joined Van Halen. So, I mean, that was kind of an ego thing, I think, kind of trying to keep himself compared to Van Halen, because at the time he wasn't part of that whole band or anything like that. But I mean, he talks pretty in-depth about kind of the pre-production of the compilation and then going into the tour and kind of the aftermath. I mean, he was very, very confident in trying to make it work, I think. But Eddie was just messed up, and I mean, no disrespect to Eddie Van Halen, rest in peace, but he was messed up at the time. And it was pretty much his fault that things didn't work as well. But I mean, I also think that sooner or later, with Sammy's ego and kind of the way Sammy is, things probably would have come to a head eventually. I'm not saying it would have, or wouldn't have, but it probably, 50-50 chance, probably would have come to a head eventually. But I mean, the tour, I have a show from the tour from Georgia. I believe it's Atlanta, Georgia. It's called Hurricane Halen. And the show is not bad, actually. And I think that the performances are not that bad. It's just kind of Eddie's rhythm playing that is kind of all over the place. His lead playing is pretty good, actually. But the one thing about it is, like, he doesn't really stick to the solos, the classic solos. He kind of does in places, but then he kind of goes off on whatever he wants to go off with. But his rhythm playing is kind of at times frantic and aggressive, and even his background vocals are very, very high, and you can hear him pretty much screaming the background vocals. And I mean, it is what it is. I mean, I'm not going to complain too much about that. And also that he was playing like some interesting little interludes during the kind of when Sammy introduced the songs and stuff like that. He would play these little interludes, like for instance during Humans Being, he would do sort of a little riffage type thing, and I thought that was actually pretty interesting. It reminded me of like I Owe Me back in the day with Black Sabbath, like Embryo and kind of those little I Owe Me instrumentals. That's what it reminded me of. But yeah, I mean, I didn't think it was that bad. I've heard some shows were a lot better than others, and in Sammy's book he says that things ended pretty bad. And I mean, go read his book to hear more about it. I'm not going to get into kind of the very dark parts of that whole thing. But I mean, it crashed and burned. Eventually, they were back with David Lee Roth by '07. And they made it work until Eddie's passing. So, I mean, I find this era very interesting. I find this whole compilation very interesting because, I mean, it was a one-off thing. It didn't go anywhere. And this was kind of the last hoorah, the last stand for the Van Hagar era. And I mean, I've grown to enjoy the Van Hagar era over the years. I'm not saying that it's good or better, I'm not saying it's better than the original era, because it's not, because it's two totally different bands. I mean, comparing these two, like, for instance, talking about Black Sabbath, like the Tony Martin era, some people compare it and they're like, okay, that's not Black Sabbath. To me, that's Black Sabbath. It's got Iommi in it. It's got the heaviness in it. It's Black Sabbath to me. This is not Van Halen to me. And I'm not saying they should have changed the name or whatever. I mean, it is. I accept it as part of Van Halen. But this is just not... This is not the same thing. I mean, this is leaps and miles different than the Diamond Dave era. And, I mean, I was revisiting the Best of Volume 1 compilation, and when they did the two new songs, that chemistry was there. And I mean, having Diamond Dave back in that mix, things just flowed so perfectly. And to me, with the three new songs, like I said, they're good, but things just, to me, didn't flow quite as well as it did with the Diamond Dave reunion. And I mean, that's another subject for another day with the whole Best of Volume 1 ordeal. But, I mean, yeah. I mean, this is just kind of an interesting era of this band. I mean, this is kind of the low point. This is kind of them attempting to come back, and at the end of the day, just really kind of didn't work. And it was kind of a failed experiment. But, I mean, there you go. That's my review of the Best of Both Worlds 2004. I'll probably title this video like looking back at the Best of Both Worlds 2004 tour and compilation. But I hope you enjoyed this video, and I mean, like, comment, subscribe, share this video, and I will be back very soon with another video. So God bless you guys. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay free, stay frosty, and as I always say, see you next time.